Hello everybody, welcome back to Workshop 3. We've got a really exciting workshop for you today. We've got lots of stuff all about using GitHub, using security in your project, and then also some really key concepts here that maybe get looked over a little bit when it comes to vibe coding. So it's really important for you to, understand some of these security basics. With that being said, let's jump into it. I'm going to show you, we're going to jump into this project that I've been working on recently, and to give you a bit of an overview, it's basically a community site where people will be able to share their projects, add forkable sites. The first thing I want to do is explain to you why we use GitHub. And GitHub's great because it allows version control. So you can basically save all of the changes that you've made. If you want, you can create a branch, make changes on the branch. And if you don't like it, you can always discard that branch and come back to the safety of your main branch. So it may sound a little confusing, but I'm going to show you using some slides exactly how GitHub works. Now, before that, version control in Bolt itself is very functional and very useful to use. If you're not quite at the stage of wanting to use GitHub, this is like an 80% mid-ground point, which is really fantastic to know. So if we come up into the project name and we click the down arrow, you'll see that we have version history. So we've got our bookmarked versions and we've got all of our versions here. So you can see we've got 105. And basically those are all the commits that our Bolt agent has made to the project so far. So basically think of this as like every time the agent finishes a command and it makes that bleeping noise and it's showing that the task is completed, it creates a little summary. So it describes what happened and adds it to this list here. Now, with this, what you can do is you can actually rename it if you want. So say you've got a working version and you might describe the feature, and we'll save that and we'll also bookmark it. So now if we open our bookmarked versions, you can see all of the ones that we've saved. Now, if we call it working too many times, it doesn't make much sense. So it's nice to actually explain what the feature is, and Bolt does a pretty good job of summarizing what this is in the name. It's also got the time and date as well. So that's a basic way how to use version history. Now let's jump over into GitHub, or at least get an understanding of how GitHub works so that you're able to implement it. Now, GitHub is free for anybody to create an account, and it has pretty generous usage limits on the free plan. So feel free, just go into github.com and then you're able to, I've already logged in and created an account, but basically what you'll do is once you go into GitHub, just create an account. And then once you've got GitHub logged in one tab, if you come over into Bolt and we click on this status here, we're then able to connect GitHub. And it basically, if you've got GitHub logged in one tab and then you open it here in Bolt in another tab, it'll ask you to create a repository name. So let's go over some of the key terms in GitHub first, and then that'll make a little bit more sense. So let's jump into this slideshow we've got. So version control and security in Bolt. Now, here's some of the key terms that you're going to use in GitHub. We've got a repository, a commit, branching, forking, cloning, a pull request, and merging. So what is a repository? It's a digital folder where your project's files, history, documentation are stored. It's basically the project folder. It acts as a single source of truth for the project. Think of this as like a master cookbook. It sits in the main library and holds the official recipes and everything that's ever been made, or the changes that's been made to it. Now, what is a commit? A commit is like a snapshot of a particular change. That's what I was saying before. When the Bolt agent finishes one of your commands, it saves this as a commit, and we see that in the version history. So, it's good to add a brief message for this, and think of this as like a timestamp where you basically say, on this date, we've done these changes. So what is branching? Think of a branch as a parallel version of the repository. And it basically allows you to work on a specific feature, bug fix, or do an experiment in isolation away from the main branch. Often when you create a repo, the default name is main, and then you can create like feature branches or your working branches. And you can think of this as like tracing paper, where you've got your cookbook and then you put tracing paper on top of that. You can outline and copy everything, make changes to that if you want, and then you can merge that back into the cookbook if you want. But if you don't like those changes, if they don't work out, you can always scrunch them up and get rid of them. Now, so forking is when somebody makes their GitHub repository public, or you've got special privileges as a collaborator, and then you decide to create an exact replica of their repository on your own GitHub account. So the analogy, it's like creating a remix edition. You basically have the chef's cookbook, and then you publish it using your own GitHub, and then you can make all the changes you want to it. It's basically almost the step before cloning. Cloning is the process of downloading this repository from your GitHub cloud onto your local device, such as you download all the code files locally and that's stored on your computer. So there's another analogy here. A pull request. This is an important one. Think of this as like a digital request that's asking to merge the changes from one branch into the main branch, and it's a request. It's basically submitting a suggestion to say, I tweaked the recipe and I think it tastes much better. Let's bring this into the main cookbook. And then the publisher can basically say yes or no. And that's what the process of merging is. Merging is basically bringing those changes from one branch into the main branch or another branch, but usually the main branch, and saying, yes, we're now adding this into main and we're going to use that for production going forward. Okay, so let's put all of this into practice. Now, I'm going to jump back into my project, and you can see here we've got it synced to GitHub. Now, this is a what I'm actually going to do is I've duplicated this project, and when you duplicate a project, it disconnects from GitHub. So I'm just going to show you with this duplicated version so that you know how to do this from the start. Now, you'll see the GitHub logo. It looks like a cat with a tail in the top right here next to publish. So once you've created your GitHub account in another tab of the same browser, and then you come up here and you click on GitHub, it'll basically say connect your GitHub. You'll press authorize, and it uses sort of single sign-on, and it basically connects it super easily, just like that. Now it's giving us the option to create a repository from the existing Bolt project. So we're going to call this Community Hub V2. And notice that I can't put spaces in here, my bad. So I'm just going to put a little dash, and because I've already got one called Community Hub, I'm just naming this V2 for the purpose of demonstration. And at the same time, if I open up my GitHub account, I'll come into my account. I can look at all my repos, and you can see we've got Community App updated 12 minutes ago. We've got some other ones there, but let's come back in here and we're going to say Community Hub V2, create repo. Does its thing. It's creating the repo within my GitHub account. So I'm just going to refresh this, and you'll notice here we go. The one that we just created, updated now, it's here. And if we can actually look in that repo itself, we can see the branches. As I said, it's got one branch. The default branch is main. We're going to click on that, and you can basically explore the code. Well, that's if you wanted to maybe like clone it, and if you wanted to download it locally. You can also come in and basically inspect a whole bunch of things about this repo. So there's pull requests, which is what we were talking about before. There's added benefits here in GitHub that I'm not going to go over in the call, but there's insight settings, a whole bunch of stuff. Now, so what we're going to do now is we're going to come back, and we can see that the repo that's connected is Community Hub V2, the one that we just created, and it's got that one branch called main. Now, say you want to try and you want to add a new feature to it. Basically, we can go create branch. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back into this project, and this is the one that I've mainly been spending most of my time on. And the reason why I'm coming back into this is because when you duplicate a database, it doesn't carry the user data over. So I'm going to make all the changes in this one. If we wanted to make a new branch, we're going to hit create new branch, and we're going to say front end fix. Let's say there's a small little issue. We're going to create this branch. We can see it's made this new branch, front end fix, and that is now active. If we come back into all of my repos, this is the one we were just working on, community app, and you'll be able to see that in the branches, we now have front end fix. It's visible. And looking here, you can see it's no commits behind and no commits ahead of the main branch. But what if we come in and we make a change? So something cool UI related that I want to show you guys is, here's a great font pairing website. So it's called fontpair.co. I'm pretty sure they're all Google fonts. So Bolt has access to pretty much all of these. And say you find like a really good font combination that you like. Let's say I quite like this Albert Sands and Barlow. What you could do is you could say, let's copy that over and let's select this element and we'll say, please change this to Albert Sands, font. Cool, so I'm just gonna send that off. Great, so while we let that do its thing, maybe we can make a quick start on security, unless this finishes really quickly. Yeah, may as well wait, it won't be too long. Are there any questions about GitHub and how it works so far? Ben, yes.
Yes, hi, William. So my question on GitHub is, okay, so you're saying that GitHub is a repository of all of the files and all of the information. Now, if you don't have GitHub, where are all of these files and things then?
Yeah, so these are just saved like to your Bolt account. So basically, like your Bolt account basically acts in a similar way where it saves your project, it saves your files, which is...
Okay, so you're not at risk if you don't have it, for example?
No, you're not at risk. There are some benefits of connecting GitHub, which I'll go into pretty soon, which you'll see. But at the moment, if you're just starting off, it's don't feel like it's absolutely necessary, but there are some benefits, which I'll explain in a sec. So let's come back into the project. We can see that this has changed to the font that we like. And now if we have a look, we'll just make sure. So yep, we're on the front end fix active. Now, oops, my bad. Let's come back into GitHub. Now what I'm going to do is refresh the page. And notice this front end fix, it's now ahead by one commit. So basically that save, that prompt that we just made in Bolt has saved as a commit. And now we basically need to merge that into main. So to do a pull request, we can come in here, pull request, it says front end fix has recent pushes. If I was to come back into the project itself and change over back into main, then this will not have been changed. So this is just on this specific branch. So we're going to come into the pull request. Now we're going to give this a name. So I'm going to say logo font change. Copy that. We're going to create the pull request. Now we have here the pull request is open. We can see the option to merge the pull request. Basically, just going to show you a few other things. We can come in here, add a comment to it, and then we're going to merge that pull request. You can also view so before we fully lock that in, what we can do is we can actually look at the difference as well. So Let's come back in. This is the open pull request that we've opened, but we haven't really merged it just yet. And we can have a look, and you can see here that the change that it's made is it's updated the Tailwind config. And if we actually click on that file, you can see all the code changes that it's made. So when you're really in production grade, sometimes it's good to understand which files it's changing. I know a common issue with vibe coding in general, no matter what platform or agent that you're using, is sometimes it will make an unnecessary change in a completely unrelated file, and it will have an impact on some of your features. And so a good way to prevent that is just by looking at the files that it's changing here. There are also some cool tools out there. There's one called Code Rabbit, and that basically you can install that into your GitHub. You connect it as an integration, and basically every time you're making one of these changes, that it looks through the changes that you're trying to make and it checks that it doesn't introduce any bugs. So that's something when you're ready for more production grade that you can add as well. So now let's confirm this merge. And basically what that'll do is there we go, pull request successfully merged and closed. So what I like to do afterwards is delete the branch. And that just means that once you're happy with a feature, you've deleted it. And then if you want to make a new feature, you can create another branch from the existing main. So now you'll notice if we refresh, yes, Ben?
Sorry, I'd just like to know, what is the difference between what we did now versus versus inbuilt doing something and then reverting, for example? Reverting or not reverting, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's effectively like the same thing, but GitHub is kind of like an industry standard. So for example, 6 months ago, I was releasing an app to the App Store, right? And then Apple denied, saying, hey, look, there's an issue in your onboarding flow. And there was something that I personally couldn't tweak. It was like very complicated and I wasn't quite sure how to fix it. So I went, created I created a repo in GitHub and then was able to add a collaborator into that. And say you did need somebody on like Upwork, for example, and there was like one specific thing that you couldn't quite do, you can simply come into the repo itself. You could say settings, you can go collaborators. Once I've logged in, then you can basically invite someone as a collaborator using their email address, and then they're able to pull that code. Say they're more technical, they wanted to bring it into a tool like Cursor, they could then make those changes themselves on a branch, and then you could inspect all the difference in the code from their branch to your branch, and then you could pull it in. Yeah. Okay, so that's basically GitHub in a nutshell. And there's, as I said, Code Rabbit's a cool thing you might want to use. I think it's $25 a month, but if you're doing production grade software and you've got paying customers, then it's great to have another set of eyes on all the production pull requests that you're making. And then also this ability to collaborate, as I mentioned, is a great benefit as well. Okay, so let me just jump back into, I think we're almost ready to quickly look over security. So let's quickly go through a few things about security in Bolt. So basically in this day and age with vibe coding, there's 5 big security risks. Sure, there's more, but these are the 5 basic ones that a lot of people might not fully understand when they start off. And just to be clear, I'm not 100% a full security expert myself, but this is some of the research that I've done. It's basically saying that these are the main issues that you'll find. So let's quickly go through each of them and what they mean. So cross-site scripting. So this happens when your website blindly trusts whatever text a user types in and displays it to others. If a hacker types computer code instead of text and your site displays it, that computer runs on everybody else's computer. So here's an analogy, basically saying, you're telling the database you want something. Instead of requesting basically, numbers about your account, it might say like how many views a page has had. It might say, okay, do this to the database, and it can cause a lot of issues. Number two, we've got a cross-site request forgery. So the hacker tricks your browser into doing something on a website where you are currently logged in. So your browser happily does it because it sees you as logged in. For example, you could have your banking tab, or the user has their banking app open in another tab, and because they're logged in, it uses code from your browser or your tab, and it can affect things in their tab as well. Ben, you've got a question? No? Oh, sorry. I just saw the hand was raised. So, yeah, this is another thing to pay attention to. We've got an analogy there as well. So exposed secrets, you're all probably fairly aware of this. Basically, your secrets or your environment variables are special keys that allow you to perform certain functions. So for example, if you're allowing, if you've got an OpenAI API call, so maybe you want to like aggregate data or, you know, create some sort of LLM chat for the user, you have to pay as the developer. You create an API key with OpenAI, and then that's a special secret key that you don't want to expose to the clients. You don't want that to be hard coded into the client side of your app, or what the user downloads onto their computer. That wants to be saved on the server side as like an edge function so that nobody can access that. Dependency risks. So what we were going over last week, when you're using NPM to basically install packages, sometimes these packages can be, you know, not necessarily malicious, but they could have security risks associated with them. So that's something to be aware about as well. And then missing content security policy. So this is a lack of rules regarding who your website is allowed to talk to it. So without this, a hacker can get a script onto your site, and then they could send users private data on. So these are basically the 5 that we want to prompt for. And what we can do is we can speak to the Bolt agent itself, and we can ask it to do a full stack security audit. Now, some of you are probably wondering, how is this different from the current security audit that you've probably already seen? So once I come in to publish my project, on the top right here, it says running security scan, and then it says 5 security issues detected. Now, because our database or Bolt databases are powered under the hood by Supabase, Supabase has this incredible security audit feature where basically it will look through all of the policies in your database, and it will determine if there are any issues amongst them. So to give you a basic understanding of, I guess, policies and what they are and what they do, let's come in. We're going to look at one of our tables in our database, for example. You can see we've got some fake user data here, and we've also got policies. And row level security, which is also known as RLS, is basically saying that the user sends through a very specific code to the website, and if that matches the same code or the user ID in the database, then they can access anything to do with them as a user, but no other rows. So it basically gives people access to their row in the database, but nothing else. And you can see that to manage row level security, that certain policies are created in the database. Now, these policies are created functionally first, and then the security is something that you've got to fix once you can see that they're functional. So say you've got the front end's working, the data is coming across, say you want to like make a project or like a project or something like that, and you can see that the functionality is there. We then come after that into our security scan, and we identify what these issues are. So basically we can see this one, the function search path is mutable. So basically what that means is search path is the database is looking through a variety of different places to get the data. And if this is changeable, then malicious attackers can come in and basically tell it to look somewhere else and provide fake data, and it can mess up our whole database. So it's really good that we have this security audit because it identifies these issues that would normally be a little bit more something that we might not necessarily know. So let's come in and we're going to ask Bolt to fix. And this is, as I said before, this is kind of like the database security, this side of things, where you're, prompting these policies to be updated in a secure way, which is different from the security prompt that we were just looking at in the slides, which we'll also do in a sec. Great. So while that's doing its thing, I might just give you a quick little insight into how hosting can work. So let me find a project. 1905. Oh, sorry, just muted somebody. But let me just take you into another project that I've got. This is just a very basic feedback form where I was testing how users can submit their data, and you see it at the bottom here. Now, when we want to publish, I think all of you are probably pretty familiar with this. We can just come in and we can publish or update just like so. If we do want to add a domain to it, you can see that I've actually added this project as a subdomain. So this is, hopefully I'll have time to show you how to do this. Jimmy, I see you've got a question.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Sure.
Regarding the security issues, are there different security issues if you're publishing to, say, the App Store, like either Apple's App Store or Google's App Store versus publishing to the web? Or are they the same, essentially?
Yeah, good question. This probably needs to be double checked, but from my experience, I think the web is usually open to more vulnerabilities. That's my basic understanding. I know that like when you're publishing to the Apple App Store, for example, I know that like Apple abstracts a lot away so that it's a lot harder for the user to get the actual client-side source code of the app. That being said, it still can be done. So you can't put your secrets just in the code base of like your Swift app, for example, because people can extract that information, but it's harder to do. Whereas like on web, people can pretty much inspect anything and find, I guess, your client-side code a lot more easily. But that said, it's still important to be aware of, that you're covering up those server-side secrets. So basically, the answer to that is from my experience, I think the web is more open to vulnerabilities, but that's something to probably do like a deep dive, do a little bit of research into as well yourself. Sorry if that doesn't fully answer the question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I realized that because we've already connected this project, I'm going to jump into another one. And so say we're ready to publish it. Okay. This was a while ago. Brian, I see you've got a question.
Yeah. Can you hear me now or not?
Yes. I got you now.
Mic and stuff. On the earlier when you guys first rolled out that security feature, I did tell it to do it, and then other stuff stopped working. I imagine it was, I don't know, maybe the way it was designed wasn't working right. Do you have any tips on? Okay, I ran it, I did it. One of the concerns always with AI or anything is it does things you weren't expecting it to do. It made changes elsewhere because it thought that made sense. Is there any? And I know some of these changes could be. I don't know, you can't undo some of the changes it's made when it does these securities. Do you have any tips on that or, best practices, I guess?
Yeah. It's a really good point because as we were saying, reverting the database is a little bit more complicated. What I could suggest is maybe having a look at the migration that it applies. So with some of these policies, that's something that I actually need to look into, whether when the security changes get made, whether that counts as a migration or not.
I believe it is. Those are typically run into like permissions-based things. You built a table to say you were expecting to say you only have permission to one thing, but then, or you should have permission to everything, but then RLS added a feature where you can only have access to your own rows or something. So prompt engineering is probably the fix there. It will know what it just changed. You can probably just say, hey, I should have had access to this, but I don't anymore. It'll probably fix that.
Well, yeah, that's what I ran into, Eric. But the problem, and I'm not trying to derail this whole presentation. The problem is you don't always know everything it's doing. So that was the I don't know, maybe just making it a little more obvious for user friendly. Just taking a note, nothing. You know, you can't change the whole system today, but just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point. And I think like having to go over into GitHub to see how the code changes, sure, like it does explain what it does in the Bolt agent a little bit. And so it's probably worth, rather than just skipping over all of these, to like really have an understanding what it does. But you do make a good point that maybe we can be more transparent about the files it changes when it does make updates.
And then one last thing, this is just, I guess, a pet peeve thing here. You know, after it does type up all this, I have to scroll up every time. I don't know if anybody's listening that could put that on the list to go. Just arrow to the top real quick, and then also just make it faster. And then when it's asking you questions, I know that you have to scroll and read it, so that's my responsibility. I get that. But it'd be also nice if there was like a little, maybe just above the 18 million monthly tokens, scroll the top or scroll the questions so I can find them, because sometimes it's asking questions to itself and I'm trying to answer the questions, and all of a sudden it goes, okay, I already answered my own questions. And so it's just, I'm like, oh, shoot, I don't need to answer that question. It was talking to itself. It's just a little bit of weirdness in there. But
yeah, good call out, Brian. Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll make a note of that. Ben, before I get to your question, let me just show a few more things because I don't want to run out of time here. So there's coming back to publishing a project, right? When we have the ability to publish it, we can come into our project settings and we have the ability to basically change this name, which is the subdomain of .bolt.host, which you should all know how to do. You can also buy a domain in here. They're pretty cost effective. They're usually $15 to $20 a year, and then the same to renew. But that really depends on the actual domain itself. And then if you want to connect your own domain, you can come in and say you've already got an existing domain. In my case, I've just got one for my name, willsay.com. If you want to, like, say you've got a business and you've already got a landing page that you built with something else, such as like Squarespace or Wix, and it might be called, mybusiness.com. If you wanted, you can come and let's say you make like a really good addition to your business. It could be like, a client intake form, or it could be a dashboard for your clients, or whatever it may be. You've got your new idea in Bolt and you just want to add the Bolt app with its own Superbase or Bolt database, like already working web app, onto the existing domain that you have. You can just do it like this. So you could be like test domain dot, and then whatever your domain is called .com, and then you can add the domain. And so what that'll do is it'll then ask you to resolve these DNS issues. So it'll give you a CNAME. We can basically copy this first part here. Now this is a little confusing at the moment because some hosting platforms need all of the, some of them, including GoDaddy, just needs the first part. So I'm just going to copy that, and then also look here. Actually I'll copy that, and then test domain I'll type out. So we'll come back into our GoDaddy account or wherever we're hosting our domain name. We'll come into DNS settings, add new record, and then this is where we choose the option to add a CNAME. We just type test domain, we add that value, and then we save it. Now we just need to continue and verify. And so what that will do is I need to use the authentication app on my phone, which I'm using for this live stream, so I can't do that right now. But basically, it then comes in and it reveals that you've resolved the DNS issues. Then you can click here to get a certificate that basically enables the user's browser to know that it's like got a secure connection with the server. Okay, time for a quick question, Ben. I see your hands raised.
So, RLS, right, so row-level security. I noticed also that when I had that on, things didn't work very well, and I went, like, Bolt continued going to, like, infinite loop type of vibes. Is it fine for me to keep row-level security off? Because apparently, according to ChatGPT, it's called like dev mode. Dev mode is all RLX is off, and then you kind of build like that, and then at the end you kind of put it on.
So if you have any actual users with important user data, then you should have row level security on. It's pretty much essential so that your users are just limited to the information that they've saved. So think of their email address, if they had a phone number, if they have any sort of private data that they're putting onto your website. For them to access that, row level security should be on so that they're the only one to access that information.
Okay, but if there's no actual data in there that's real,
then it's fine to develop without it. But before you go into production, I'd do a double check that it is on. Okay, so let's come back in here. We can see it'll be running a security scan again, and this time instead of 5 issues, it's got 1 issue. So let's have a read of it. Okay, so it's got another issue. We're going to ask Bolt to fix. Now, some of you may notice that there's something saying that like maybe the passwords have been leaked. This is a common issue that comes up here in the security scan. So it's basically asking you to put sort of extra protection on there. I'll show you how to deal with that error in particular because the Bolt agent can't actually fix it. So if you come into email and you see here where it says prevent leaked passwords, I'm going to turn that off. Well, it should normally be on, but watch. If I turn it off and then I run a security scan, then, okay, it's not coming up right now. Oh, here we go. So leaked password protection disabled. This is something that I've prompted the agent several times to fix and it won't. So if you are seeing this issue and you want to address that, as I said, just come into auth, come into your email settings, prevent leaked passwords, turn that on, and then when you run the security scan, that won't come up as an issue anymore. So let's just check. Okay, great. So we've gone through our security issues. We started off with 5. We ran the prompt once. We're now down to 1. We ran it again. We're now down to 0. So that's the basically the server-side security dealt with. Now what I'm going to do is come back into, if we look in our presentation, this is the example full stack security prompt. So I'm going to grab all of that text. I'm going to copy that. And I'm also going to clear the context beforehand, just so, in case it's already used up some of the context, let's clear it so it's got as much room to think about this as possible if need. So I'm going to paste this in. I'm also going to let it plan so it can look through the code base and get a basic understanding before it starts this security test. Now, if you've got a really large site with a big code base, instead of doing all of these prompts together, I'd probably suggest breaking them up one by one and addressing them individually. Okay, Ben, I see you got another question. No? Okay.
No, sorry.
Okay, great. Okay, so I know we've kind of been bouncing around a little bit, but what I want to show you kind of another benefit of using GitHub, and if you were to deploy using Netlify, let's come in here, let's come back into, let's look at the repo. So this is, we've got the repo URL at the top. Now, what happens if we jump into Netlify and we want to host our Bolt application through Netlify instead of through Bolt hosting? Effectively, Bolt hosting does use Netlify in the background, but we've just abstracted away a few of the difficulties of connecting it. But if you do want more features, you can come in and host in Netlify. So let's, pretty soon it'll load and show some of the existing projects I've made. What happens if we come in here and we want to add a new project? So I'm going to click add. We're going to say import from an existing project. And this is where we can deploy directly with GitHub. So I'll just make sure that all of this is connected. It's authorized. My GitHub account is visible. So let's search our repos. Great. So the 2 community app repos that we created are here. So let's click on this. We're going to call this Community Hub. Whoops. Community Hub. Whoops. You see that this name's already been taken with Netlify, so let's call it Bolt Community Hub. Great, okay, that's available. And now the branch to deploy is the main. And so what Netlify does is every time you make a commit, which is when the agent finishes doing its thing in Bolt, then it's going to automatically deploy the app. So this is a little bit risky doing it on the main. Sometimes it's nice to have like a production branch where you can basically pull your changes from the main into a production branch, or you could work on your working branch and then bring that into main whenever you want those changes to happen. But just for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to connect it to main, and we're going to hit deploy. Oops, I did forget to connect my environment variables. You saw before it had like a page that it basically asks you to bring your variables over into Netlify, which you can copy and paste the env file. So
Can you demo how to do that from GitHub? Like, is there a secure way to save those .env or the environment variables in GitHub?
Well, okay, so this is another important thing to know with GitHub, and I'm glad you brought that up, is it's actually good not to publish your env file to GitHub. So that's kind of generally...
Well, and maybe I'm wrong, but isn't there like a secrets portion of GitHub or something? Like, yeah, the git ignore within Bolt, it includes the .env, and then actually it's helpful to add the .env.example, because sometimes Bolt creates that. But aren't there like repo secrets or something, and can Netlify use that or no?
Potentially. The way I go about it is I just come into Netlify itself and I'll just add my secrets in here. If we come into the project configuration and we come down into environment variables, this is where we can add our env variables. So this is kind of the flow that I've been used to doing it. Maybe there is a way of like directly connecting the two. I'm just going to show you.
Yeah, this is what I do all the time. I just didn't know if there's a expected. I mean, if somebody built something not using Bolt, is there a way to put the environment variables securely into GitHub? And maybe not. I know there's like a secrets or a section in GitHub, but I don't know if that integrates with Netlify.
Yeah, good point. Something that I think's cool to know about when you deploy on Netlify like this is we can do some pretty exciting things such as split testing. So for those of you who aren't really familiar with split testing, it's basically like an A/B test where you're going to push one version out and another version out concurrently at the same time. And then you can basically run analytics on both of these and you can see which is getting better engagement. Often a landing page is like a really good place to test this out. And then you can also monitor like your call to action button and you can see which narrative that you're describing on your landing page attracts more customers. So to do this, we come into activate branch deploys, and we need 2 branches to do so. So at the moment, because we've only got 1 branch, it's not going to work, but that's an easy fix. Mostly what I wanted to show you is that we can do the security scan here. It's really important to address these issues. Then we've got our agent security prompt, which I think I ran these. Let's just have another check. So here we go. It's done a summary. The security audit reveals that while your application has good basic security, there may be some areas that need to be addressed. And something that I like to do after doing this initial security prompt is you can say to the agent, just, like using those 5 security tests that I asked you to look at before, please create a security score for my app. And so it can use all of that as context. And for example, a project I was working on before testing this out on, I asked for a security score, and its initial security score, it gave like a 6.5 out of 10. And then I said, okay, what are some of the low-hanging fruit optimizations you can do to fix that? And it made those changes. So here we can see it's giving us a score for each of these issues, and it'll as these generative, AI agents work, is they only have so much context window that they can work on for each prompt. And so it may sound like, a little bit intimidating that you're asking it for a security check and then it only comes back half finished, but it's good to know that you can prompt it again and prompt it again. And every time you do prompt it, it'll basically try and find other issues. And as you go on, you're obviously starting with the biggest issue first and the easiest for like hackers to take advantage of. And then as you go down this development journey, then you'll find smaller and smaller wins along the way. So this is kind of an example showing maybe 75 out of 100. There's a critical weakness here. So this is something that, and generative AI is fantastic. These LLMs generally do have a pretty good understanding of some of these security issues. So if you don't know exactly what this means, feel free to prompt this in particular. So I'm going to copy this and say, let's fix this issue. Basically, we can paste that in. And so now it will work specifically on that issue, and giving full context or clearing the context and then allowing the agent just to work on one particular issue then allows it to dive in deeper with other, files in the code base that may be, it may need to reference for that particular issue. So let's see where we're at. We're pretty much at time. Do we have any questions from the community? Any things that anybody wants to share? Again, this is, something that maybe you don't consider. It's maybe not the most glamorous thing when you're creating a web app, is thinking about all of these security issues, and they will kind of catch you by surprise. You may not really expect some of these issues along the way, but it is a pretty key component of, when you're in production. So again, you can use GitHub if you want. You can always find somebody externally, maybe on from an Upwork type website, share a branch with them and really see if there are any security issues that they can find, or use the Bolt agent like we're doing here. Jimmy, I see you've got a question.
Yeah, just a quick one. For the split testing, do you need two separate subdomains for that split test, or will it just go use the same subdomain for?
It'll use the same one. So I did a working example. So I think, let's actually wait. I'll see if it's working. Let's see in here. Okay, so this is one. And now what you'll notice is if you refresh the page a bunch of times, it keeps, I think, the IP address, and it knows, okay, let's not change to a different test for the same user. But if you copy that and then you create like an incognito tab, okay, well, that's still the same, but I'll do it again. And here we can see this one's actually different. So notice that this is narrower. The background is a little bit more bold, yellow, compared to this version here. So this is just a very, very simple split test that I did. And a good way to test it, as I just showed, is open an incognito tab using Google Chrome, Command-Shift-N on Mac, and just paste the new subdomain in a few times. If you don't get it right the first or second time, then usually the third. If it's a 50-50, it should show up. Eric.
Perfect, thank you.
Is there any ETA on Claude? Or not Claude, Codex?
Codex? I don't have a clear ETA, unfortunately. I know everyone's been super hyped about 5.1 and how good the new release is. Also, Gemini 3 has done some pretty impressive things. I will give you guys a little insight onto how you can leverage something like, Gemini 3, or, if you wanted to use ChatGPT 5.1. If you look carefully at this project, well, you'll notice this background. You see how we've got these stars flying, and it looks like the camera position's almost like a geostationary orbit spinning around the Earth. So to create something like that, I just jumped over into Gemini 3 and I prompted, and just out of curiosity to see how capable it was. And it just took a few prompts to refine it, but it was able to create this component. And that's what I asked. I said, I'd like, using React, create a background component. And then I was basically able to copy all of that code over, and I just dropped it directly into the Bolt agent, and I said, here's code that I created using another agent for the background component, and it basically just used all of that code and it integrated it perfectly. So that's an example. We don't have Codex just yet, but if you did want to experiment with some of the other tools out there rather than just the Claude agent, then you can do something like that.
Is Bolt.DIY still being used or maintained, or is that?
It's still being used for sure. To add a little bit of context for the people who don't know what Bolt.DIY is, that's basically like our open source version of Bolt, where you can come in and basically fine tune the agent yourself and change the source code. I think add in your own API keys. We haven't been investing as much time into that recently. I know pushing out all the Bolt's cloud stuff with the databases and this Claude agent, we've been really investing our time into that. But it is there as an option, just not quite as up to date as Bolt.New.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Great. Well, I feel like today we had a few major things to cover. We've gone over GitHub, the benefits of using GitHub. We looked over security, both using a security scan and prompting the agent itself to do a security test. And then we also touched on deploying in Netlify. Now, just to wrap things up, next week, we moved our office hours to next week. So instead of being on tomorrow, I know a lot of you celebrate Thanksgiving. We've moved the office hours from tomorrow to the following Thursday. We're going to be doing a Reddit Ask Me Anything next Tuesday. So if you do use Reddit, feel free, go into Bolt.New builders. And let me just confirm that for sure. Here we go. Yep, Bolt.New builders is the subreddit. We've created a post where we'll be doing an AMA for an hour. And then also this recording of this workshop will be shared on YouTube. All feedback on Luma is much appreciated. And finally, another exciting thing that we have a little bit further in the future, but on the 9th of December, so not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, we're going to be doing a AMA with Eric Simons, the CEO of Bolt. So we're asking for video submissions where you're able to film yourself using a type form and basically ask a question. And then we're going to sort of organize all of these, provide them to Eric, and then he's going to answer as many as possible during the AMA. So if you do have a question, not for me, not for any of the other people lower down on the team, if you want to ask the CEO, Eric, then what I'll do is let me grab this form for you and I'll share it in the chat. So I'll just copy the URL now and then just open up the chat. Basically, the link that I've just provided in the chat now, feel free, you can open that up, just record a quick video, any question that you'd like to ask, hopefully trying to give direct transparency to Eric Simons, our CEO. So looking forward to seeing that. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and hope to see you all next week. Next week's a really exciting one. We're going to be doing APIs and using server functions. So basically, say you want to integrate an LLM into your website. Say like people might write comments, and then say you want to like tag those comments or categorize those comments, or maybe a potential client does like a project proposal or something like that on your website. You can then use AI directly in your site with your user data, and we'll be learning how to do an API call to using a server-side function so it's nice and secure to an LLM, and then bringing that back into your front end. So it really opens up a lot of possibilities, what we're doing on next workshop. Again, thanks all, and we'll leave the chat open for a few more minutes. It'll be open for anybody who wants to reference it. And thanks again. Hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving tomorrow, if you celebrate. If not, good luck building with Bolt. And one more thing, we've got the winner of the $500 voucher from that form that we sent out 2 weeks ago will be revealed this afternoon. So they'll be getting an email explaining who that is. So thanks again, guys, and see you all next time.